Welcome to a special edition of America Uncanceled. I'm here joined with Larry O'Connor, and we really wanted to tackle this Pennsylvania race. It's been a wild one. There's been a lot going on nationally.
It's still a wild one. We can't talk about it in the past tense, right? It's happening. The ballots are still being counted, and who knows who's going to get the Republican nomination. I know someone who might have a hunch, though.
Oh, please.
He wakes up Philadelphia, Pennsylvania every morning on AM 990, The Answer, a great Salem radio station. And also, he's the proprietor of his own podcast called The Chris DeGaulle Show. He is, in fact, Chris DeGaulle. Chris, you must have had a late night last night.
Yeah, it was a late night, and we have no answer today. In fact, I talked to Dave McCormick on the show this morning, and he said he thinks no matter what the final count is, we're going into a recount, which means
God help us all.
Days.
Well,
we're going to have to send Matt Schlapp there with the riot squad.
No. But it does, just so that our viewers know, you do have an automatic recount if the vote if the spread is less than 0.5%. Right now, it looks like it's 0.2% with Dr. Oz in the lead. But I got to tell you, last night, it was really, I thought McCormick, that I think his campaign infrastructure was so organized in the early voting process, in the mail-in ballot process. And then I also felt, Chris, that Kathy Barnett, although there was a lot of talk that she was going to be able to really outshine and get a lot more votes, she fell short. But I do think she did get those undecided last-minute voters. What are your thoughts?
I think there is an interesting dynamic between Oz and Barnett, and I think the beneficiary was Dave McCormick. Right. I think the people that were hardened for Barnett were never going to vote for Dr. Oz, but I think there were a lot of people with Barnett that weren't entirely sure there at the end. A lot of the attacks stuck, and so they decided to bail on her and go for McCormick. So McCormick, I think, is the net beneficiary of that late war between them. That early vote is really the key, though. As you know, that's like a time capsule. Those people were in a different era when they voted, and politics changes every single week, so who knows?
Mercy, I walked through the CPAC in Orlando with Chris this last February, and so many people stop him and say, I love your podcast, I love your podcast. So many people listen to Chris DeGaulle, and so they know you have interviewed all of these candidates so many times over the last several months. What do you think was the difference maker here in terms of closing this out and getting us to the point we're at right now?
I can't explain why Doug Mastriano, for instance, President Trump's endorsed candidate for governor, won by a rout. I mean, he closed it out early, and then it came down to this razor wire finish for the Senate race. President Trump did come on the show yesterday and said he doesn't. Ultimately, when I asked him, who are you going to support if Dr. Oz doesn't win, he said, whoever. I'm totally behind whoever. So he was clear about that. But the Oz-McCormick thing in particular was always the conventional wisdom. It was just the two of them. Barnett is what confused everything, and the only reason she surged is because I think of the attention Oz garnered into this race.
Well, and she surged because of the debate. She did a very good job. I think some of the other candidates were a little more flat. And I was in Pennsylvania on Saturday, where I went to a number of these women Republican events. All the talk was about Kathy. And so I thought that was interesting because the women were tired of the negative campaigning between Oz and McCormick. However, to your point, Chris, I think the early voting did play a role. I do think, obviously, you have a lot of these real experienced campaign veterans on McCormick's side. But, you know, we're still waiting to see where the rest of these votes are. It looks like there's still votes that need to be counted in Bucks County, in York County. That's a little bit of a stronger area.
I'm having PTSD right now.
A stronger area for Oz. And going into Mastriani, I think what was interesting about that is that he's got to figure out as we go into the general election how he's going to attract these independent voters, because he will be target number one for the Democrats to make sure that he doesn't win. And as you know, Josh Shapiro, who's the Democrat nominee, he is obviously very well funded.
Yes, he is. His reports are $16 to $20 million. He's just been sitting on quietly throughout this whole primary season. The thing about Josh Shapiro is he's undeniably attached at the hip to a very unpopular Governor Tom Wolf. How he extracts himself from that record, I don't know. But in this era of lockdowns, we had very aggressive lockdowns, and the people of Pennsylvania passed 2 constitutional amendments to take the executive power away from Tom Wolf. So I like that COVID story for Doug Mastriano going into the fall. I think that needs to be told a lot because Shapiro was right at Tom Wolf's side throughout it all.
Chris, here in the D.C. area, the Virginia race last year, there was a really crowded field of candidates for the Republican nomination. Glenn Youngkin was able to coalesce all of those candidates pretty quickly after a pretty contentious primary. What are the odds of this happening? It's been rough this year between these three candidates. And I saw that Kathy Barnett had made some comment last week that she wouldn't join any of the globalists that are vying it for her against her for the nomination. Whoever wins, will they be able to bring the party together?
I think so. I really do. Although I did take, I mean, look, I just did. I took calls today from people who said, I'm not going to name names here because it's not important, but I cannot vote for so-and-so. I'll vote for the Libertarian before I'll vote for so-and-so. There's hurt feelings today because emotions were high. It's strange because, again, it wasn't even close on the governor's side. I mean, Mastriano ran away with the thing. It was put to bed early last night. This Senate race, though, brought out emotion in people that I still can't explain or dissect. With the former President Trump involved in it, the television celebrity of Dr. Oz, kind of the granular grassroots support of Kathy Barnett, and then this guy, kind of everyman, American patriot called Dave McCormick, who's just kind of, I'm not saying he stayed quiet, but he somehow managed to run this subterranean campaign to the finish that seemed to benefit from the fighting between Oz and Barnett, I think.
Interesting
maybe.
to watch. He did lay low. I thought McCormick did. You know, I do think that part of it was that they really, you know, the campaign manager who ran Glenn Youngkin's campaign, I should say, or their consultants are the ones that ran McCormick's campaign. So I think that they just played a very different strategy, really honed in on the western counties. Allegheny County, obviously a place where McCormick would run strong. I think at the end of the day, you get an America First Senate Republican candidate, so it's a win-win for Pennsylvania. And quite frankly, going into the general election, John Fetterman, I mean, talk about Bernie Sanders 2.0.
Right, but in the personification of a professional wrestler, this guy is like a real character.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I mean, I know everybody talks about, you know, people looking the part or not looking the part. Look, for whatever you ever wanted to say about Trump being an unconventional, not traditional-looking candidate, have you seen John Fetterman? I mean, like a 1990s garage band, washout or something. Yeah. And I would also say, and I don't mean to make this personal this way, but the guy just had a heart procedure yesterday. A pacemaker put in. He had a stroke. And, you know, that brings to question things like early voting and mail-in voting. Would that have changed people's votes at all if they'd known that? Yeah. If they'd known that on election day?
Well, I got to tell you, I just think more so even just his progressive policies. He's been supportive of single payer system in terms of the health care. He's all in for green energy. I don't think that's going to play well.
Yeah, he's not just another vote for Chuck Schumer. He's another vote for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren.
Exactly. So I just think for the
big ugly AOC.
Well, and for the Democrats, I think that they really are feeling like they can win Pennsylvania. But I just think with Fetterman, it's going to put them in a tough position. I do have to ask you, though, do you think it would create a divided vote where people would vote for Josh Shapiro but then vote for a Republican Senate candidate?
I could see it. I mean, that's kind of what a lot of people, I mean, the media in town and across the country are all calling Mastriano the insurrectionist January 6th candidate. I asked Mastriano about that this morning. You know, is he scared of that label? He is not even a little bit. He's confident that a lot of Democrats changed their party registration to vote for him. He feels he connects with the working class. He thinks he can close the sale.
I do think he has some Trumpian qualities, and I was listening to him last night, and he was very much about protecting freedoms, preserving our Constitution, fighting for the people of Pennsylvania. I thought his message actually will resonate well in Pennsylvania, especially in the rural counties. But again, you know, Philadelphia, that is ground zero for constant chaos in elections. What do you think could happen there? I know election reform has been one of the top issues for these Republican candidates as well.
You know, I asked Trump yesterday, he was on the show, and I said, dude, should people feel discouraged about Pennsylvania and the outcome? And, you know, and he said, look, the only way to overcome this is to swamp the vote. I mean, massive turnout. He is still deeply concerned, Donald Trump is, about Pennsylvania. He doesn't think it's been fixed. Mastriano doesn't think it's been fixed. So they have this problem, too, with our base of support that feels like they can't trust the outcome of the election, and we may get more of the same. We only hope that there's more vigilance this time, that maybe we're just aware now of what's coming and we'll be more watchful.
It's not close, they can't cheat. That's the bottom line. Chris DeGaulle, you are the man on the ground and know what's going on in the state where all eyes are politically right now, continue to be as this recount occurs. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Good to see you both. Thank you, guys.
Take care. And we'll be right back. Welcome back to America Uncanceled. I'm here with Larry O'Connor, this great radio host. You're doing a ton of stuff too. It's not just radio.
There's a lot going on. Town Hall Media, you can see me over there all the time.
And you're doing these little snippets now on Town Hall.
Yes, we're doing daily video commentary on the left. Well, they give us a lot to talk about.
It's like therapy for you, I'm sure.
It's very, very cathartic.
But you got to do it really quick. You've only got a couple minutes, right? Mm-hmm. That's impossible for you. I don't know how. You can go on and on and on.
What is that supposed to mean?
Anyways, I love the interview with Chris. I think there was a couple things we were talking about afterwards during the break about Biden's unpopularity in Pennsylvania, what impact that's going to have on the race.
Conventional wisdom is always going to look at who's the Republican nominee, who's the Democrat nominee, how much money they have, what sort of we went through just now. But what they're not focusing on is how incredibly unpopular Joe Biden is in Pennsylvania. Remember when Donald Trump did so well in Pennsylvania in 2020, despite how the counting went, one of the major positions he took and one of the major allegations he made was that Joe Biden was going to stop fracking, he was going to screw up the gas industry, he was going to screw up the oil industry, we're going to be paying twice as much for gas a year later. I mean, here we are. Mm-hmm. And Biden lied about it. The economy is terrible up there right now, as it is everywhere in the country. It's a huge uphill battle for any Democrat trying to win this November, let alone flipping a Republican seat. I really think the advantage goes to Republicans there.
That's interesting.
No matter who gets the nomination.
The Democrats are really thinking that this is a toss-up.
Mm-hmm. They need it. If Democrats want to keep control of the Senate, they got to win Pennsylvania.
And think about it. Pennsylvania is critical for 2024. That's always a critical state for But I do think when you're looking at other states like Nevada, it looks much better on the Republican side because Adam Laxalt will likely win that primary.
Great out there, and he's a great candidate and very America first.
Yes.
And really
and I think that's
guy.
the constant theme throughout so many of these really primaries, right? Because you have the Democrats saying, okay, well, President Trump, his endorsement matters, but he's losing some of these races, which, look, it is a bit like gambling. You're going to, go behind a candidate, but at the end of the day, the person in that state is going to vote for who they think is the right person. And they will take Trump's endorsement into consideration or not. But the reality is that the common theme is the push for the America First agenda that we're seeing across the board with any of these candidates that are trying to win.
Well, look at North Carolina last night. I mean, that was a Trump-endorsed candidate in Ted Budd, right?
Right. You changed his name at some point. I was like, no,
I got it right. I mess up names sometimes. Okay. And but he is absolutely an American First candidate in North Carolina. That's critically important. The textile industry was devastated there. Right. So many jobs, tech jobs as well, left the state and left the country. Mm-hmm. It had been a toss-up state. Obama won it, actually, and Trump completely turned that around. Right. North Carolina is now looking more and more solid Republican. It's because not just because of Trump and his personality, it's because of the policies. That's what matters.
And the shift really has been, I think, when you look at the Obama years into the Trump years, is very much connecting, I think, Republicans with working Americans, families. That seems to be the growth. I think that's what President Trump did so successfully in saying we need to reach out to everyday working Americans who are trying to figure out how are they going to pay the bills? Yeah. How are they going to pay the high gas prices? How are they going to pay, how is inflation impacting their lives? I think right now we're even dealing with this baby formula shortage, which we've seen 2 children being hospitalized because they're not absorbing the right nutrients. Awful. And you look at this, and I have to tell you, this has to cross party lines. And what makes me so mad is the fact that the FDA knew this. Mm-hmm. They knew this months ago. The Biden administration knew this months ago. But Larry, they did nothing. They said nothing to the parents to help plot and plan. I think this is very devastating, even politically, for the Democrats.
Oh, absolutely it is. And it's one of those things that get, like you said, transcend party lines and party identification. Yeah. When you literally have to go to bed each night worried about how you feed your child, your infant, the next morning, I don't care if the person's got an R or a D at the end of the name. If they're going to fix this problem, that's who I'm voting for. And I hope Republicans and conservative candidates between now and Election Day are smart enough to actually get that and actually emphasize it. I don't know about you. I get a little nervous about Republicans feeling like they're going to get the majority this November, so they're sort of, playing prevent defense, and they're not actually telling voters what they're going to do.
Well, I will have to slightly disagree with you.
Please do. I want to be disavowed of this.
Senator Rick Scott actually came up with a 12, 13-point plan of what needs to be done to solve these problems.
Is that Majority Leader Rick Scott you're talking about?
Oh, you know what?
Where was
so lovely. But But I think that he did, his blueprint is very helpful, I think, for all Republicans to be able to rally around his ideas and really the Republicans' ideas and sell the message.
I agree with
your
that.
point. But I'm going to
It's the leadership that I have a problem with. But you're right. Rick Scott did a great job.
But, with the Roe v. Wade leak of the opinion that it looks like they're going to overrule Roe v. Wade, the Democrats are betting on that to be one of the issues.
That's why they leaked it.
Yeah, no kidding. To be able to really win votes in November and try to work on the suburban world as well as the liberal base. Do you think that's really going to make a shift or a difference in these elections?
Not in the states that matter.
Yeah.
No, not in the states that matter. The fact of the matter is the majority of Americans are actually much more pro-life than Roe v. Wade reflects, and certainly the majority in the House and Senate right now. You saw what they tried to vote through last week.
Yeah,
they claimed they were codifying,
extreme.
even Joe Manchin called it what it was.
Yeah.
It would be radical. That's not where the American people are on this
Right.
issue. I think they're kidding. Listen, it will help them raise money. Absolutely, they'll raise a ton of money, but I don't think it gets them more votes. Not in the states where they need it.
Yeah.
Certainly not. And also, frankly, let's look at the presidential elections for the last 40 years. For the most part, the Republican candidate who promised to put forth conservative justices, they did pretty well on that campaign issue. Donald Trump did very well. The only difference is Donald Trump actually delivered with 3 incredible justices.
So the surprise of the night was definitely Madison Cawthorn, very popular in the GOP base, in the MAGA base. But he lost that race to Chuck Edwards.
He came across a little erratic and a little, listen, he's a young guy. He was literally the youngest person to ever come into Congress. Yeah, but you were a young guy. I don't
think you did half the things that he did.
You're right. And listen, I understand
well,
people
at least
saying,
there's no photos to prove it or video.
People say, no comment. People say that you're right. It's 25-year-olds wear the uniform and die for this country. 25. When I was his age, when I was Madison Cawthorn's age, I had a job with a lot of responsibilities. I wasn't in politics then.
Right.
I wasn't a media figure. I wasn't in this town. And you know how awful this town is and how awful the people are here.
Well, they go after Brett Kavanaugh's high school yearbook for crying out loud.
And so again, I'm not making excuses for Madison Cawthorn. I'm just saying, listen, I think that there's a lot going on there. I think that, frankly, being in the spotlight and being in Washington, D.C. probably wasn't the best place for him right now.
Look, and I do think he was a target for the Democrats. He was obviously very popular. It's what they do with all these kind of, MAGA personalities, is trying to figure out how they can destroy them. And, so we'll see this. Obviously, then it becomes more of this new person, Chuck Edwards, who obviously he was a state senator, so he had a big chunk of his district
he had an infrastructure
within the congressional district. So I think
it's a Republican seat. That's Mark Meadows' seat, isn't it? I think it is.
Yes.
I think that was Mark Meadows' seat.
So here's the deal. What you learn, the lesson in politics, is that while you can become a national figure, don't ever forget the people at home and who you serve. That's always, I think, the key lesson that we learn in all of this.
This is Mercedes Schlapp and Larry O'Connor. The more you know.
The more you know. Anyways.
Is that going to be the clip?
That's going to be the promo.
That's what you put out.
But it's great to have you here, Larry. We've missed
Thank you.
Matt's in Hungary.
Yes.
And we've got
and I'm hungry. So
I'm hungry too.
Connects.
Let's go get turkey.
Great.
No, so
it's a whole other
that
country.
was awful. We're going to just include a really quick video with Matt's update since he's today in CPAC Hungary.
How's it looking at CPAC Hungary, Matt? Let's hear it.
Hey, we got great news here in Hungary. CPAC Hungary is just hours away. If you want to watch the proceedings, which start at 9 a.m. tomorrow Hungarian time, 6 hours ahead of us in Washington, D.C., just go to conservative.org and you can watch all the proceedings. We have a special message for George Soros. We're here in Hungary, and CPAC is working with our Hungarian friends to preserve their national sovereignty, to encourage their Hungarian families, and to make sure all of us who love freedom are working together to put an end to socialism around the globe. We look forward to hearing from all these great speakers here at CPAC Hungary and getting your input on how we make this movement even bigger and better.
The good news is, Larry, is that Matt is not in Turkey, but in Hungary.
That's correct. But he puts the pest in Budapest.
It's getting bad, really bad. So we've got to wrap this up. But I do want to tell you, Matt made a really good point, and he talks about how everybody's looking at America. Across the globe, they look at America to make sure that we continue to stand for freedom. And that is really the message. It is this yearning for freedom that everyone across the globe, this is what they want. So many of these conservatives in these other countries.
The international symbol and beacon of our nation is the Statue of Liberty, not the Statue of Equity.
Exactly.
Not the statue of government policies.
Right.
Liberty.
Right. So with that, we're going to wrap it up before we really tell you even more bad jokes. But Larry, it's great that you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad
us.
I didn't break the show today.
Thank God on CPAC Now. And y'all take care. Have a good night.